This is yours. Merci de prendre place.
Thank you, everyone, for taking your seats. Now we will continue our work for this session of the Plants Committee, and we will start with item 15 on our agenda, which is the CITES tree species programme. I will give the floor to the Secretariat to present this document. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
To the document number 15 concerning the CITES tree species programme. As some of you will remember, the Secretariat presented a longer document on the CTSP at the recent meeting of the Conference of the Parties, which was contained in document number 20 for the COP. The detailed outputs and possible future activities were also described in an information document number 43. So we haven't repeated the information in those two documents in this present one. And as the Secretary General recalled this morning in her opening remarks, the CTSP has produced an amazing number of outputs. I think she mentioned over 70 outputs, and all of those are available on the CTSP website, which is why we haven't reproduced them for this meeting. At its meeting in Panama, the Conference of the Parties invited parties to provide financial, technical, and in-kind support to developing countries for the implementation of the Conventions for Tree Species. Funding for the two flagship initiatives that the CITES Secretariat has coordinated over the past years to improve governance and sustainability of trade in tree species have both come to an end in 2022. On behalf of the beneficiary parties, the Secretariat is grateful to donors and partners for their support in these two initiatives. In response to the decisions of the Conference of the Parties, notably decision 19.50, we are pleased to inform you, notably decision 49, we are pleased to inform you that the European Union has pledged some bridging funding to support the implementation of the new listings adopted at COP19. It's also set out in the document. Further, the present document is containing a list of some of the technical and scientific outputs of the CTSP of relevance for the present meeting of the Plants Committee. The first set of outputs concerns non-detriment findings. At least 18 non-detriment findings have been produced and are available on the CTSP website. In addition, at least one project has produced a guideline on how to make NDFs for Dalbergia species. Two have submitted to the present meeting their NDFs under item 16, and the produced NDFs have already provided the scientific basis for new export quotas that have been published on the CITES website as well. Some identification materials were produced, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire and in Vietnam, and are available in the Timber ID tool that is on the website as well. These will be relevant for your discussion under item 19 of the present meeting. Finally, I should mention the report on Agarwood produced by the International Timber Trade Organization, ITTO, present here, which will be relevant for your discussion on agenda item 27 on Agarwood. The Conference of the Parties requested that the Plants Committee provide advice and guidance on the potential for a permanent program of CITES tree species. This issue is partly addressed under item 13 on CITES and forest, and information provided in the present document may inform your discussions in the working group on CITES and forest that you just agreed to establish before the lunch break. Turning to the recommendations, the Plants Committee is invited to take note of the scientific contributions of the CTSP to its work, request the Secretariat to bring to the attention of the Technical Advisory Group to the CITES Non-Detriment Findings Project the outputs produced under the CTSP and their linkages and contributions to the NDF project's relevant work streams. And finally, as I just mentioned, take into consideration this information in the context of your discussions on CITES and forests in the working group. This concludes my remarks, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Merci, Secretariat.
I thank the Secretariat. So I now open the floor to members of the committee if there are comments on the document that has just been presented on the CITES tree species programme. The floor is open for members of the committee.
Alors, je donne la parole.
I give the floor to Central, South America and the Caribbean.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Como es la primera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it's the first time I am speaking at this meeting, I would like to congratulate you on your re-election and the way in which you are so effectively managing the meeting. When we talk about the CITES tree species programme, we are talking about, I think, one of the most successful experiences that I have experienced within CITES. And I think with the funds that were generously given by the donors to the work of developing countries throughout the world to be able to implement CITES for trees has been a very good investment and a very good idea. Based on our experience on the subject of implementing everything that relates to non-detriment findings, the need to have information to be able to apply NDFs effectively and to strengthen the work of our compliance authorities linked to legal acquisition findings. This is all part of the major challenge that countries face. There are ever more tree species that are being listed. At the last COP, there was no exception. We had entire genera included. So I'd like to draw attention to the need to have programs such as this to be able to effectively implement CITES. And what we really need is this. I would like to insist it's a good idea, it's a good investment, and it's about conservation and sustainable use and maintaining our work. So it's very important. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you to the representative of Central, South America and the Caribbean. Oceania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to congratulate the Secretariat and participating parties on a very successfully implemented program. Thank you also to the Secretariat for preparing this document. The CITES Tree Species Program has been raised by the Oceania region in recent meetings of the Plants Committee, the Standing Committee and the Conference of the Parties. And I just once again welcome consideration for expanding a future ongoing program to all 6 regions. Thank you, Chair.
Merci au
I thank the representative of Oceania. I see no further request for the floor from other committee members on this programme for CITES tree species. So I now open the floor to observer parties. The United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States supports noting the scientific results produced under the CITES Tree Species Program and requesting the Secretariat to bring to the attention of the Technical Advisory Group to the CITES Non-Detriment Findings Project the outputs produced under the CTSP. We also support considering the information provided in this document in the context of the intersessional working group we established this morning on CITES and forests. Finally, we would like to note for the attention of this body that at the November 2022 International Tropical Timber Council meeting, the United States pledged $125,000 US to support the role of ITTO's expertise with CITES-listed tree species and collaboration with the CITES Secretariat. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
Thank you, USA. I now give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is Indonesia's first intervention, we would like to congratulate Madam Chair for your re-election, and would like to convey our appreciation to the Government of Switzerland for hosting our important meeting, and Madam Secretary and her team for the excellent arrangement. And I'd like to thank our Secretariat for preparing the document as well. On our current agenda, Indonesia highly appreciates the support provided generously by donors to range states through the CITES 3 species program. We found it significantly improves the availability of data required to ensure the export is non-detrimental. We hope that this program can be extended and expanded from a national project approach to a species-based regional approach, as suggested in the closing meeting in Kuala Lumpur earlier this year. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, Indonésie.
Thank you, Indonesia. Do we have any further request for the floor from observer parties? Malaysia, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, firstly, congratulations for the appointment. Malaysia is one of the countries that has benefited greatly from CTSP, and the CTSP had concluded in 2020 with significant outcome, which is one I would like to highlight is the establishment of 2 Aquileia malacensis arboreta in the states of Pahang and Selangor, 2 of the states in Malaysia, for genetic conservation of those species. Malaysia would like to work more towards NDFs for Aquileia, and if more funds will be enabled to us in the future. So Malaysia would like to support the recommendations of the Secretariat to make this program a permanent one and to encourage more funds to enable more NDF studies to be undertaken in the future. Thank you.
D'autres demandes de parole?
Do we have any other requests for the floor from parties? I now. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. We also want to suggest that this programme continues as a permanent part of CITES, as it has clearly had such wonderful outcomes for the conservation of tree species. Thank you.
Je ne vois.
So I see no further request for the floor from observer parties, so I now open the floor to observers, WWF.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This intervention is on behalf of IUCN, Traffic and WWF. And as this is our first intervention, we congratulate you warmly on your re-election as Chair of the Plants Committee. We thank you and the Secretariat and the Committee and those who submitted documents for all of the work leading up to this. Excuse me. We acknowledge the immense contribution that the CITES Tree Species Programme has made to the implementation of tree species listings down the years. We thank the European Union for its financial contributions during this time and for its pledge of a further €500,000 for bridging activities. Madam Chair, we acknowledge that such a programme cannot be reliant indefinitely on one principal donor. Irrespective of the outcomes of the discussions on CITES and forests, we would We would want to see this programme continue, and we call on parties and donor organisations to step up and to continue funding this work. This is especially important with the addition of some 150 extra species to the CITES appendices after COP19. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Please take the floor and please introduce yourselves. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. It's IPCE France Europe. I am the Secretary General. First of all, congratulations on your chairmanship. I'm allowing myself to briefly take the floor. We have, for some 20 years, been working on replanting and forestry management of Cesana Planeta for some time. And we followed the file on this program. And if within a working group of CITES there were an opportunity for such a group to take place, we would be very happy to join and be able to share our experience and expertise and work on replanting of Pernambuco, amongst other species. Thank you.
IPCE France.
Thank you, IPCE France Europe. We have a request from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, pour la...
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. As we are speaking for the first time, I would like to congratulate you on your re-election to chair our committee. I'd also like to congratulate all the members of the Plants Committee who have been re-elected, and I'd like to thank and congratulate the Secretariat for the preparation of this meeting. And I also would like to thank Switzerland. And I'm most pleased to see so many women helping to lead this committee, and I make myself, of course, available to assist in any way with your work. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for the documents that were prepared on the CITES tree species program. We have benefited in my country on 3 NDFs, Pericopsis elepta, Prunus africana, and I would like to thank the European Union for the generosity and the pledge of support and financing, and we certainly would like to see this program be continued. It's very beneficial to our country and to other forestry countries, and so I certainly advocate for continued support to help us with the tree species that have been listed in CITES. Thank you. Thank you to the representative of the DRC. I see no further request for the floor, so the Secretary General will make some comments following on from what we have heard.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you much for all your interventions and for the support that you've given to the program and the extension of the program. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the team at CITES as well for what they have done. We have been going through some difficult times during the pandemic to implement the project. And we also, our coordinator who went on sick leave, so everybody had to pull themselves together and contribute to this program to be able to make sure that it continued and that we would have good results. And then, of course, to those beneficiary countries who were part of this program for the last few years, who also, despite all the difficulties with the pandemic and sometimes issues dealing with going out into to do field work that they weren't able to do for some time, and trying to come up with other ways to implement the projects. I really congratulate you for all your hard work. And finally, to say that in terms of the outputs that have been received, they are actually quite impressive, and I would appreciate you looking online to see what these outputs are in terms of assisting with the implementation of the convention, and very necessary, as some of the other speakers have said, with more and more tree species being included in the appendices, and also those that are extremely valuable for many parties. It is very important to know that these are being traded sustainably, and through this type of program, we're able to assist in doing that and have a better idea of what exports can take place under the circumstances for each party. I would like to note and also express my gratitude to the intervention by IUCN, WWF, and Traffic, to note that it doesn't work very well when you only have one donor and over a long period of time. So we have now had the commitment from the European Union to give us a bridging grant for the next year as they consider within the EU how to continue supporting this, but I also am reaching out to other parties and donors to find ways in which they can also support the work that we're doing, similar to what has been done in the past with CTSP. And that's part of what we have been putting together under CITES and Forests as well, that in meetings with the Food and Agriculture Organization, the great joint work that we do with ITTO, and others where we can find common objectives that we can, through this project, through this work, through these activities, find ways to meet our common goals. It's really very fruitful, and there's a lot of interest in this. So I ask for you to consider the extension of the program, but also thinking how we can fund the extension of the program, also using the very important lessons learned that we've had over this period of time. And I'm really grateful to all those beneficiary countries who have made all the effort to ensure that there were some very good outputs and to assist them in implementing the convention, and also that can be scaled up and used as an example in other countries with the results that have been delivered by this project. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you, Secretary General. So following on from the exchanges we've heard, I see there is strong support for the programme that was presented. So I think I can say that the Plants Committee agrees to the recommendations in paragraph 19 of the document PC 26 Doc 15, and to request of the Secretariat that they take note of the scientific results, request the Secretariat to bring to the attention of the Technical Advisory Group. During the work of the working group of CITES and Forests, and to fine-tune the mandate for this group. Thank you.
Nous passons au point suivant à l'ordre.
We now go on to the next item on our agenda, which is document. This is a set of documents on the review of significant trade.
Donc, nous allons passer au...
So we will move on to the next item, item 16, which covers the review of significant trade. And first of all, on Appendix 2 species, and we have a set of documents, a group. We'll start with document 16.1, and I shall give the floor to the Secretariat to cover this item.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, just a second. So document 16.1 on the overview of the review of significant trade is presented in accordance to paragraph 5 of resolution conf 12.8. The last occasion where the Plans Committee considered an update of the status of the RSC overview was at PC 25 and the online sessions. Since then, some cases have been removed following consultations with the Standing Committee, and some have been added, most notably the exceptional inclusion of Pterocarpus erinaceus or African rosewood from selected range states in stage 2 of the process through intersessional decision-making processes by the Plans Committee. Additionally, paragraph 12 of the document also includes an update in the implementation of decisions 17.108 to 17.110, Rev COP 19, concerning the RST tracking and management database. Madam Chair, the Plans Committee is invited to take note of the present document and to welcome the progress made with the implementation of the decisions relating to the development of the RST tracking and management database. Thank you.
Merci, Secretariat.
Thank you. I would like to invite the Plants Committee to take note of this document. The floor is open for your observations. North America has the floor.
Vous avez la parole.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. In preparing for the Plants and Animal Committee discussions of the review of significant trade in specimens of Appendix 2 species, the North American region noted that it provided a good opportunity to more fully explore the functionality and content of the new RST tracking and management system. Unfortunately, however, it was not feasible to provide feedback prior to the April 30th response date of notification to parties number 2023-022 requesting input on the tracking system and user's guide. We would like to propose that additional input be sought following the meetings of the Animals and Plants Committees, perhaps through a second notification, so that parties having now used the database to prepare for the meetings can provide more insightful comments. Thank you, Chair.
Merci aux représentants.
I would like to thank the representative of North America. I see no further requests from the floor from committee members. Would any observer parties like to take the floor?
Je ne vois pas de demande.
I see none. Observers. I don't see any requests for the floor. The Plants Committee takes note of the document we have just considered.
Merci. Nous passons.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to document 16.3, prepared by Madagascar on the implementation of Plants Committee recommendations on Prunus africana. You have the floor. Thank you, Madam, for giving us the floor. As this is the first time Madagascar is taking the floor, we would like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your re-election to the chair of the Plants Committee.
we would like to thank the CITES Secretariat for having organized this meeting and the Swiss government for their warm welcome. Madam Chair, members of the Plants Committee, what I'm going to do in this statement is try to give you a summary of the efforts made by Madagascar with respect to Plant Committee recommendations on Prunus africana. By way of reminder, I would tell you that Madagascar set a 0 export quota for this species in order to implement a sustainable management of the species and any threats to its survival. This was taken into account, and taking into account the export quotas, national export quotas lists, and it is still in force until the recommendations have been implemented. That is to say, plan of action, plan for management, and an NDF. In 2019, Madagascar benefited from Secretariat support through the CITES tree species program for the implementation of a sustainable management plan for Madagascar Prunus africana, involving stock assessment, forest management, and ensuring that any international trade in Prunus africana from Madagascar would no longer threaten its survival. It was also important to ensure that the species was to enjoy conservation in the mountainous forests of Madagascar. The project came to an end in 2022, and I can summarize its results as follows. Madagascar has taken full stock of current management and harvesting of Prunus africana and has also considered the situation with respect to scientific research. Madagascar has a national action plan on the species. It was prepared by experts and was validated by all stakeholders and the different players involved. Madagascar chose a pilot region out of the 4 range areas of the species and has ensured that enough biological and ecological data was collected in order to assess the status of this resource and to ensure that possible export quotas could be properly established. We have a management and harvesting inventories that were developed working with the African regional coordinator for the CITES tree species, for the CTST, and he is an expert on Prunus africana. Different thematic studies were also carried out on natural regeneration, production capacity in bark, and reproduction, ethnobotanics, and the different active principles depending on different parameters used. Madagascar has now established rules for the harvesting and management of the species, bearing in mind that we need proper management with respect to harvesting and the organization of this sector, and the management of the forests that are harvested. This is currently being dealt with by the Ministry for the Environment and Sustainable Development. Having looked at all the data collected in the last 3 years, Madagascar has been able to set up a management plan for the species as well as an NDF, which has a prudent annual export quota. I would like to stress that this is a pilot region and these figures are small. The idea is to have a low quota in order to ensure that Madagascar is in a position to ensure that things are managed properly. The management and scientific authorities work together in developing this project, and they're going to continue to implement oversight mechanisms and traceability according to the means available. By way of conclusion, Madagascar has largely met the recommendations of the Plants Committee for Prunus africana. We do hope that the committee will be able to take these efforts into account. Of course, the data collected and the NDFs are not national. However, they give us the opportunity to test sustainable management of the species in a pilot region. We would like to thank our partners, particularly the European Union, the CITES Secretariat, the African Regional Program of Regional Coordination for Africa of CTSP, the scientific authorities in the range states with whom we had an exchange of experience and skills that were of great assistance to us. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the representative of Madagascar. The floor is open to committee members for any comments they might wish to make. I see no requests for the floor. Would any observer parties like to take the floor? I apologize. The representative for Europe had requested the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Madagascar for all the hard work on this. And I suppose we have a few issues maybe with some of the data presented. So I suppose Madagascar highlight a full stock take, and we would like to highlight that the data in this document is not really as far along the path as that. There is only 1 out of 4 range areas assessed. In that area, Sophia 1, they didn't find any plants, and in the area of Sophia 2, in 26.5 hectares, there was only 26 trees. And I think a lot of the quota they suggest is based on the data from these 26 trees. So I suppose we would suggest that to Madagascar to continue with the work and maybe the zero export quota until we have a little bit more data to support their quota increase. And just noting as well that 35 kilograms of dry matter per tree probably seems a little high to us. Thank you.
I would like to thank the representative of Europe for that statement. Would anyone else like to take the floor? Any other members of the committee? North America? No? In that case, the floor is open to observer parties. The United States has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The U.S. wishes to acknowledge the significant advances made in Madagascar's effort to meet the PC recommendations and the important capacity building from the CTSP project. This progress is especially notable given recent challenges such as the COVID pandemic. We are supportive of considering the progress made by Madagascar at the present meeting as part of the RST working group mandate. And we would like to point out that this may be one of the first examples of a country-species combo returning to the committee once trade is wishing to commence or intends to commence, in that they had been removed from SIG trade because they had for a lack of trade. So we hope it can be included in the working group mandate to look at this work. Thank you.
Thank you, the United States. I now give the floor to Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair, and we want to also thank Madagascar for the lots of effort that they have made with regards to the RST for this species. We know that sometimes both financial and technical resources are limiting for parties to execute certain tasks or assignment at a scale that we might desire. We note the limited scope of the report. However, this report is really very important because it gives us some insights in terms of what is happening, which shows that RST remains an important tool for us to use. I also wish to take this opportunity to appreciate all the partners that supported or continue to support the tree species program. I think this is evidence that such impact can be really made possible, and we request and call upon those partners and also through our Secretariat to continue and, if possible, scale up so that we can continue to support countries like Madagascar and several others to execute this important work program, because it gives us very objective insights in terms of which direction or decisions we can take. Thank you very much.
Merci.
I would like to thank the representative of Zimbabwe. Would any other observer parties like to take the floor? The DRC has the floor. Thank you, Madam. The DRC would like to congratulate Madagascar on the efforts made with respect to the conservation of Prunus africana, which involved the implementation of recommendations concerning NDFs. We would like to see such recommendations shared in the framework of international workshops on species like this one. This has, of course, been done in the past. Such workshops allow efforts carried out in some regions can be of help to other range states that can learn from the experience of those who've had programs like the one outlined by Madagascar. It would be useful to hear about what is being done for all Prunus africana species. Thank you, Madam. I would like to thank the DRC representative. And I would now like to give the floor to one or two observers.
Je ne vois pas de demande de parole.
I see no requests for the floor. Mexico has the floor. Thank you, Madam. With respect to this document, there was a reference made to Panama with respect to Albergia retusa. Are we on 16.2 or 3, Madam? Could you remind me which agenda item we're on, Madam? We have considered, with respect to item 16, we started with 16.1 and then 16.3. We have not yet got to 16.2. I'll wait my turn, Madam. Thank you. I don't think that there are any further requests for the floor. We will take note of the document presented by Madagascar.
Je vais, suite à consultation.
Following consultation with the Secretariat, I would like to turn to Madagascar. Could I ask whether you are requesting a quota level in your document, Madagascar? Thank you, Madam. Yes, indeed. We would like a cautious export quota.
Étant donné que ce document,
the document does not actually have exhaustive data. Could I ask whether this is the moment to make a request for an export quota, or would it be best postponed to a later stage? We would like to continue to move forward with this. And we would certainly go with the view of the committee as to whether or not we are in a position to formally apply for an export quota.
Donc, merci.
Thank you for that clarification, Madagascar. With respect to our continued, for this set of items, we had thought we should establish a working group, and that working group would have the Madagascar situation on its agenda. So the matter will be considered in a working group, which means that we can now continue with our agenda. Now, Ezekiel, let me just point out to you gently that we've come to 16.2. We're on 16.2. And I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat, which drafted the document. You have the floor, Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document 16.2 provides updates on 3 cases for which the Secretariat would like to seek feedback from the Plans Committee ahead of its reporting to the Standing Committee at SC77. It is not necessarily mandatory to consult at this stage because some of the recommendations are addressed to consult quotas between the Secretariat and the Chair of the Plans Committee. However, we considered it would be nice to have some views from the Plans Committee ahead of our coordination with the PC Chair in our documentation for the Standing Committee. So the document only covers in detail those ongoing cases which happen to be selected between COP11 to COP17, for which we have updates to provide, or for which we would appreciate some feedback on the status of the implementation of the recommendations. These concern the case of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for both Pericopsis elata and Prunus africana, and the updates on the progress in the implementation for Panama and the Albergia retusa. I would also like to add a note that in the case of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Pericopsis elata, they have made good progress in the establishment of quotas. For the quota relating to 2023, there are some pending clarifications for which we have some questions that we did not have time to address in writing this document, so we would appreciate collaboration bilaterally with DRC ahead of the working group, and perhaps clarifying these issues before the working group takes place tomorrow. So having said that, of the remaining current 8 cases between COP11 to COP17, there are no further updates to report. So, Madam Chair, we would like to invite the Plans Committee to consider the present document and the progress reported by relevant race states as contained in Annexes 1 and 3 to the document. We would also suggest to support the Secretariat in monitoring and facilitating the implementation of the RST recommendations for the 3 species country combinations covered in the present document by providing specific inputs on the progress achieved thus far, and to make any additional recommendations for the Secretariat to consider in preparation for the intersessional consultations that will take place ahead of the Secretariat's reporting to the Standing Committee at SC 77. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, Secretariat.
Thank you, Secretariat. I would like to give the floor to members of the Plants Committee and then to observer parties and then observers. Let me please remind you that your statement should be as short as possible. You will have the time to discuss these matters in the working group that is to be established. Could I ask if any members of the committee would like to take the floor? Central and South America, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam. Briefly, I would like to say the following. We welcome the advances that have been made with respect to NDF. So we also feel in Panama, and we also feel that there is every effort being made to carry out scientific studies that can help strengthen the preparation of these NDFs. We would also note that Panama has taken on board the suggestion that there be a zero export quota for this wildlife, which is another way of showing that it is really making great headway with respect to effective implementation of CITES for these species. We really would like to take the opportunity to say how much we welcome the headway made, and we would urge Panama and those working with Panama to keep up the good work, all this in the interest of the conservation of the species. Thank you, Madam.
Merci.
I would like to thank the representative of Central and South America and the Caribbean. Would anyone else like to take the floor? Any other members of the committee? Would any observer parties like to take the floor?
Okay. Your flag. Panama.
Madam Chair, as the administrative authority for Panama, we would like to congratulate you on your re-election, and we would like to congratulate all the members of the Bureau and say how much of an honor it is for us to be here and to highlight how much we have done for this species, Dalbergia retusa, also known as cocobolo, which is a major species in Central America. It is a very popular species in international trade, and we have had to do a lot of work to find out how organizations can actually get hold of the wood in question in order to put it on the international market. With respect to the NDF work done, we would like to take the opportunity to tell you how much has been done in Panama with respect to this species. Since 2012, we have reported to the CITES Secretariat this with this information is provided with respect to the export of the timber species known as cocobolo or Dalbergia retusa. There has been active national activity under the auspices of resolutions that have been taken in the course of this period, bearing in mind the demand for the resource and the legal framework of the country. Taking the period 2014 to 22, the trade reported that Panama presented to the Plants Committee in 2018, we talked about measures that had been implemented in the short and long term, and they had not actually been successfully implemented. In 2021, we had the latest resolution, DM 0148-2021 of the 5th of April 2022. This to do with cocobolo marketing. And there was a request made for specific measures in order to ensure monitoring of the international trade in cocobolo, asking that there be certificates for export or import certificates only given to those people or organizations that actually could provide all the paperwork to show that their imports had a legal traceability. We should say that we are doing everything we can in order to ensure that trade in Dalbergia retusa is regulated. However, it does not yet have an NDF, and this the need for this was made clear in 2022 when the scientific authority provided the CITES Secretariat and the Plants Committee with an NDF with a negative result. And as a result of this, the administrative authority from December 1st, 2022 actually suspended all exports of this species. We would need such an NDF, and we would therefore appeal to the Secretariat that they provide Panama with a 3 months deadline period, ensuring that documents have to be provided by November 2023. And if the paperwork is not done, we would ask that there be a zero export quota. Dalbergia retusa is currently considered to be a species threatened with extinction, and that is why we are working with the prosecution service and the forces of order in order to prevent illegal activity which is harmful to this resource. And we have tracked a number of people who are actually involved in the trade who have significant volumes of the resource, and they are currently in police custody. In the light of all this, and after a meeting with the CITES Secretariat, we feel that it is absolutely vital that we immediately take measures that will ensure that something is done immediately to prevent harvesting of cocobolo in Panama, which is why on May 5th, 2023, we asked for the publication of 2023-057, which involved the suspension of export permits for species that were harvested in the wild, this for commercial purposes. This measure could be suspended when we actually have the relevant NDF. With this measure, we have actually managed to have appropriate resource management, and we have also implemented monitoring and measures that ensure that we are in a position to bring those who break the law to court. We have also undertaken a certain number of additional activities. We have been looked for funding for NDF drafting and ways of working with the scientific authority. We are currently appointing new scientific authorities. We are currently involved in appointing 4 additional scientific authorities so that we can get support in these activities. We also hope to have a working group on timber species that will help us prepare the documentation relevant that would be necessary for the NDF. And we also hope to actually develop and adopt legislation that is and rules appropriate to timber species. And we will provide the CITES Secretariat with work that is being done in order to ensure that any artificially reproduced species are protected. And we would like to take this opportunity to thank the CITES Secretariat and the Plants Committee for their recommendations and other measures taken or suggested which provide us with means of protecting this valuable species. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Panama. Do we have any further request for the floor? I see none. From observer, any observers would like to speak?
Je vois pas de demande.
I see a request now. Mexico. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think I need more coffee because I was talking about Prunus in the other document, and I see it's also here as well. Our delegation recognizes both the efforts made by the DRC in the application of the recommendations, and we encourage them to conclude them by the next meeting of the Standing Committee. And in the case of Panama, we'd also like to congratulate them on their efforts. It's quite clear that if they have an NDF and they have established a zero export quota, and in the view of the report that was presented by the delegation of Panama, I wonder if we are now at a moment where the committee could recommend the removal of the species from the process in the case of progress made, given that there is no harvesting and there is a zero quota on the species. Thank you.
Merci.
I thank the representative of Mexico. Do we have any further requests for the floor? Mali, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to, because I'm not very familiar with this, but I'd like to know that Mali also drew up an NDF on Pterocarpus, and I don't know if we will be able to speak on that later, or if we should request the floor later to give you an update on our case. Thank you. Thank you. The case you are mentioning will be covered under the next document, and I'll also bring you some coffee along with Mexico.
Nous n'avons plus.
We have no further requests for the floor.
No. Okay. Donc.
So, the committee is invited
DRC, vous avez la parole.
DRC, you have the floor.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor, and I am very happy to hear about the taking into account of the efforts undertaken by my country. Thanks, of course, to the support of the CITES tree species program. I would like to just make a correction on the Annex 1 at page 5. In page 5, there's a minor error on the export quotas. We had for CD Prunus africana rather than Pericopsis elata. It was just a minor matter in the annex to document PC 26.16.2 on page 5, says the speaker.
Merci.
Thank you, DRC, for having indicated that error.
Donc, je tenais à signaler.
I would like to indicate that there is a working group that will be established, and the terms of reference of the working group will take into account the comments made to the Plants Committee. So now we shall move on to the next item, which is 16.4, and I shall give the floor to the Secretariat to present that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Document 16.4 relates to ongoing cases of species selected following COP18, which in this case only relates to the exceptional selection of relevant range states for African rosewood, or Pterocarpus erinaceus. The document 16.4 provides background and updates on the exceptional selection of this RST case. In paragraphs 11 and 13 of the document, we have included, for reference of the Plants Committee, simultaneous Article 13 and RST procedures that are relevant to this species. In particular, the cases that are listed in the table under paragraph 13 is where we propose the Plants Committee to focus consideration during the present meeting. Madam Chair, the Plants Committee is invited to consider the present document and the progress by the range states on the relevant RST recommendations as contained in Annex 1 to the present document. Also, in preparation for the Secretariat's coordination with relevant range states ahead of the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee, to provide feedback and advice to assist range states in the timely and effective implementation of the RST recommendations in Annex 1, and also to support the Secretariat in monitoring and facilitating the implementation of the RST recommendations by relevant African rosewood range states by providing specific inputs on the progress achieved thus far, and to make any additional recommendations for the Secretariat to consider in preparation for SC 77 and the intersessional consultations that will take place ahead of it. Thank you.
Merci.
I thank the Secretariat for this report, and I now give the floor to members of the committee.
Je ne vois pas.
I see no request for the floor, so I shall now give the floor to observer parties. United States.
Thank you. The United States acknowledges the advances to fully comply with the PC recommendations and the important capacity building from the CITES tree species program. Progress is being made by some countries to develop or update non-detriment findings and to elucidate management frameworks. It would be useful and important to provide an opportunity for focus reviews of the NDFs, including seeking input from ITTO as to the timber-specific aspects related to abundance and standing stock estimates, as well as proposed harvest levels and export quotas. Some countries that have been removed from RST or Article 13 subsequent to declaring a zero quota may not be benefiting from the capacity building to enable NDFs and legal acquisition finding makings. We would want to suggest, rather than focus on one country at a time, a preferred approach would be to prioritize a regional workshop to promote open dialogue among scientific and management authorities to share experiences, management information, and improve regional coordination with an aim to improve overall management and international trade in this species. Such a workshop could be addressed under the next separate agenda items such as the African Species Working Group, Document 32. So we asked you to consider that. Thank you.
Merci.
I thank the representative of the USA. I now give the floor to
Je ne vois pas.
I see.
Mali, vous voulez prendre?
Mali, would you like to take the floor now?
Oui, bien sûr.
Yes, yes, please, if it's possible. I'd like to thank you for giving me the floor, and I'm going to try and be really brief on the document on NDF. It's really a very large folder and document. As you know, we are one of the countries, the range states under trade suspension for this species. And in order to lift the trade suspension, the Secretariat made us aware of some matters we had to meet. So establishing a zero quota for Pterocarpus species, and that's something that we have done. And we also need to have a review, and the zero quota was communicated to the Secretariat and all the committee, and we have done so. And so under a period of 2 years, in consultation with the Plants Committee, bearing in mind the knowledge and experience, so that we can draw up an NDF based on scientific data, taking into account the guiding principles, the non-binding guiding principles that are in 16.7 Rev COP 617. So when it comes to the drafting of the NDF, we've made contact with the Secretariat, and they provided us with a list where Mali chose an expert to draft the NDF. The method that has been chosen for the NDF is where we have opted for the 2008 scheme, which is the drawing up of an NDF on the basis of 5 points, looking at biology, the range of the species, and information on the population, the management and harvesting measures, and conservation, and the precautionary principles. The biology is something that we didn't think it was necessary to present, but when it comes to the range of these species, the distribution, following a 2014 study, the timber from Pterocarpus is in a region, in various regions of Mali, and the natural range and distribution is the savanna areas and the close to Guinea area. And on the populations of Pterocarpus in the forestry areas, the 2014 inventory of forestry areas has shown more than 50 centimeter diameter. And for the NDF in particular, 148 forest areas with plants approved by the administration charged with forestry were studied. And we have the following studies. And the results are that the average density is 3.6, and of the 148 massifs, we have harvesting. The harvesting is 832,000. The export quota is of 66,000 cubic meters, and the total quota is of 56,600.3 cubic meters. When it comes to the management measures and the harvesting controls, we are applying the precautionary principle, and these are covered by the various laws which manage forest management, and the law 02017 of June 2022 on trade, export, the area of harvest, transport, transit, and the protection of wildlife. It's the CITES laws that have been translated into our national legislation, and it covers the management and regulation of forestry exploitation, and that came into place in 2021, so that we can manage the export of timber and transformed timber. The exploitation of ebony wood as well. So we're looking at working in the areas where timber is harvested and exploited. And an interministerial working group came into place. So from February, no wood should leave the country without being transformed. So that means that we are working in a suitable manner. When it came to the NDF, there were some recommendations made by the expert, which included respecting the annual quota drawn up for each massif, forestry massif area, with a management plan, and to adopt a rotation of at least 12 years, 12.5 years, to respect a minimum diameter which will be set out for each massif area on the basis of the recovery rate, and to carry out studies to better define the management parameters, and then to carry out all exploitation and management forestry work. And then the final point is to have a follow-up of the efficient implementation of the management plans that have been drawn up. And we were based on a quota of 163,000 cubic meters that were requested, but we've agreed, it's been agreed to have a 56,000 cubic meter quota, so that's about that's a little less than half of what was requested. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I would like to thank the representative of Mali for this presentation. I do not see. Do we have any further request for the floor? Do we have any observers who wish to take the floor on this subject?
No. Donc, nous allons passer.
So we shall now move on to the last document of this set, which is on RST, and we are looking at document 16.5, which has been prepared by the Secretariat, and I invite the Secretariat to present the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Document 16.5 on the selection of new species country combinations following COP19 was prepared in accordance with paragraph 1A of the resolution 12.8, where the Secretariat requested the World Conservation Monitoring Center of the UN Environment Programme to produce the following: a summary of the CITES trade database of annual report statistics showing the recorded level of direct exports for Appendix 2 species over the 5 most recent years, as shown in Annex 1 to the document, and also an extended analysis of trade to inform the preliminary selection of species country combinations, which is found in Annex 2 to the present document. This also includes a list of possible candidate species country combinations thus far identified. The data used to prepare this summary would have been available in an information document, but we can provide further clarifications in the framework of the working group that you intend to establish. So, Madam Chair, the Plans Committee is invited to select a limited number of species country combinations of greatest concern for inclusion in stage 2 of the review of significant trade. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the Secretariat for the presentation of this document, and I now invite members of the Plants Committee to take the floor for any comments. I see no request for the floor from members of the committee. I now open the floor for Asia, representative of the Asia region, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Asia thanks the CITES Secretariat for preparing the documents, and thanks the Secretariat and the UNEP WCMC for drafting the summary output. Extracting data from tens of millions of numbers of records is crucial support for the scientific committees of the Convention. And I went through the summary output, and in the Table 1 of Annex 1 to Doc 16.5, which explained the data included for the summary output, and the line distribution status includes the trade data for all distribution status except for species exporter combination where the species has been introduced according to species plus. And however, in Table 2 in the Annex 1 to the document, which is about the gross direct exports, data of exporters that are not range states of the concerned species are listed, like the Yucca's genus exported for from the Netherlands, or the Table 3 in Annex 2, like the Mammillaria from China. And so we suggest that the Secretariat provide a quick screening so that the later in session working group do not spend time discussing such data. Thank you, Chair.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the representative of the Asia region. Do we have any observer parties who wish to speak?
Mexique, vous avez la parole.
Mexico, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We'd like to thank the Secretariat and WCMC for the information that has been put together in the annexes. In the case of Mexico, the harvesting of wild species requires authorized management and the necessary populations to ensure that we have sustainable use. On the species listed under CITES, they must also have an NDF from the scientific authority. The Mexican species that have been pre-selected in Annex 2, we have Candelilla caoba and 2 Dalbergia congestiflora and Anillo. In general, the volumes exported from our country is supported by NDF based on the best scientific information available, including samples in the field, technical visits, and sustainable extraction, which has been decided with the experts. Mexico has published on the CITES webpage the protocols that are used to draw up these NDFs and guides for sustainable use in Candelilla and caoba, which are used by producers and technicians for these species, which are not in any risk category in Mexico and that depend for indigenous peoples and communities in the most marginalized areas of our country. In the 2 Dalbergia species, the volumes exported come from deadwood, which came about through extreme meteorological events such as hurricanes, where it was necessary to remove these to avoid the danger of forest fires. These volumes do not come from authorizations for commercial trade purposes, and we are in consultation with China to verify volumes that have been used. Bearing in mind what we have said, we request that the Plants Committee exclude the Mexican populations of Candelilla, caoba, Dalbergia congestiflora, and Dalbergia granadillo from the review of significant trade, as is suggested in Annex 2. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant.
I thank the representative of Mexico. Do we have any further requests for the floor from observer parties? I see no further request for the floor, if I'm not mistaken. Observers, Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thailand would like to modify in the document PC 26, doc 16.5, Annex 1, Table 2, on the page of the 67. We would like to modify the information in the under species of Dendrobium species to change from the Dendrobium species to hybrid. Because from our annual report, we report as a Dendrobium hybrid. Then the Dendrobium hybrid from the orchids is made by the human. It does not result in the extinction of the species in the natural. Thank you.
Merci, Thailand.
Thank you, Thailand. Malaysia has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to refer to the Aquilaria species, where Malaysia is listed to be one of the larger exporters. I would like to take the opportunity to inform the meeting of the measures that have been taken domestically. The national policy, we have a national policy currently to control and to move towards a zero quota for Aquilaria species. in the future. For Aquilaria species, the last removal pass was given in 2015, and which means no more harvesting of Aquilaria species from the wild has taken place since 2015. The trade that is happening now is from the previous stockpile before 2015. At the same time, Malaysia has been actively revising our quota, and we have been reducing our annual export quota, moving towards the zero export quota from the wild in a few years to come. We have also consulted our local industry via several dialogues about the quota reduction, and has continuously prepared our stakeholders in achieving the zero quota export in the near future. So that's all. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Malaysia. I think that it might be time, unless any other party would like to take the floor, I think we should probably establish the working group. Observers, if you would like to participate in the working group, you will have the opportunity to give your views when it meets. Let me read the mandate for the working group with respect to 16.2, 4 and 5, and I will continue in English.
The committee established The committee established an in-session working group of the review of significant trade with the mandate to A. Regarding document PC 26 doc 16.2 supports the Secretariat in monitoring and facilitating the implementation of the RST recommendations for the 3 species country combinations covered in the present document by providing specific inputs on the progress achieved thus far and draft any additional recommendations for the Secretariat to consider in preparation for its reporting to Standing Committees 7.7. B. Consider document PC 26 doc 60.3 by Madagascar and make a recommendation for consideration of the Plant Committee. Okay. C. Regarding document PC 26 doc 16.4 doc 4. I provide feedback and advice to assist range states in the timely and effective implementation of the RST recommendations in Annex 1. 2. Support the Secretariat in monitoring and facilitating the implementation of the RST recommendations by relevant Pterocarpus erinaceus range states by drafting specific inputs on the progress achieved thus far, and 3. Draft any additional recommendations in support of the Secretariat's reporting on this matter to the Standing Committee at SC 77. D. Regarding document PC 26 doc 16.5, select a limited number of species country combinations of greatest concern for inclusion in stage 2 of the review of significant trade. E. Draft recommendations for the Plants Committee to consider in preparation for the Secretariat's reporting on these matters to SC 77. Je viens de faire lecture.
I have just read the mandate of the working group to work on 16.2, 16.4, and 16.5. I would now like to ask members of the Plant Committee who would like to participate in the working group to please show their interest.
La région, l'Océanie.
Oceania, Europe, Central and South America and the Caribbean. That is the list of Plant Committee members. Observer parties now. Madagascar, Panama, South Africa, Malaysia, Canada, the DRC, the UK, China, Spain, United States, Russian Federation, European Union, Germany, India, Georgia, Belgium, Mali, and Mexico, Thailand, and the Czech Republic. Portugal, Indonesia, observers now. I would like to suggest that you give your name if you're interested. Please, madam, do go ahead, introduce yourself.
WWF, là-bas. WRI.
WRI.
ICPI France Europe.
ICPI France Europe. CSFI.
For International Environmental Law.
Okay.
American Herbal Products Association.
Merci. Et AITBT.
C'est ça. Merci.
Ouais, merci. Donc, le groupe de travail a été...
We have established the working group. The mandate has been read out to you. The representative of Oceania will be chairing the work of this working group. Thank you.
Merci à vous. Nous passons donc au point suivant.
We're now going to move on to the next agenda item. PC 2620, identification of timber and other wood products. The Secretariat prepared this document, and I would like to give the Secretariat the floor to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC26-20 refers to the identification of timber and other wood products. At the last meeting of the Conference of the Parties, in Panama, the COP adopted decisions 19.145 to 19.148, which are listed fully in paragraph 2 of the present document. The document provides updates on the implementation of these decisions, and in particular, updates regarding decision 19.145, which requests the Secretariat to, subject to external funds, undertake a series of activities relating to the improvement and review of the Timber Online repository. The Secretariat would like to highlight that since the repository was launched at COP19, it has continued to receive valuable contributions, including on identification materials relating to tree species just recently listed in Appendix 2, such as Boswellia, Calla, Pterocarpus, and trumpet trees. As reflected in paragraph 7 of the present document, we have also received identification materials produced by China and other ID materials relevant to tree species from the Americas. Additionally, as mentioned in the document, the Secretariat published Notification 2023-051 on identification materials, and we have received also valuable contributions from Canada, Peru, the United Kingdom, USA, and Mexico on timber identification materials. Initially, the document had envisioned making these available in Annex 3 to the document. However, as we have the repository, these have now either been included or are in process to finally being uploaded in the repository. So we see no need for an Annex 3 as we have the online repository. Additionally, for the purposes of improving the repository and fully implementing Decision 19.145, in Annex 1 to the present document, the Secretariat has included draft terms of reference anticipating availability of external funds for the full implementation of this decision. The document also reflects on the mandate for the Plans Committee under Decision 19.47, which has a comprehensive suite of elements on the topic of timber identification and other wood products, as per paragraphs A to I of the decision. We consider that these warrant careful consideration at the present meeting. Madam Chair, with this in mind, the Plans Committee is invited to consider the present document and the new additions to the online repository in response to the notification to the parties 2023-051. Based on the above and in accordance with Decision 19.145, provide feedback to the Secretariat regarding the terms of reference contained in Annex 1 to the present document. And finally, to discuss and agree on a way forward for the implementation of paragraphs A to H of Decision 19.147, including consideration of Annex 2 to the present document, and to formulate recommendations for consideration by the Standing Committee at its 77th meeting in accordance with Decision 19.148. Thank you, Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the Secretariat. The floor is now open to Plants Committee members. Would anyone like to take the floor? Europe. You have the floor, to be followed by North America.
Would like to highlight as well this CITES and Timber Guide is also now updated. I think it's also uploaded on the CITES web list. And this is the CITES and Timber Guide originally from 2016 is now updated with the new species like Boswellia and Calla SPP. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci à la représentante de l'Europe pour...
Thank you, Europe, for that information. I now give the floor to the representative of North America.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of the North American region. We thank the Secretariat for its work on decisions 19.145 to 19.147. At COP19, the North American region expressed its strong belief that the work on identification of timber and other wood products is highly important for the implementation of the Convention for Tree Species, and that there is considerable room for more work on timber identification beyond the compendium on wood identification resources. We were convinced that an intersessional working group on this topic was still needed, and we were pleased that many parties supported that view, leading to the adoption of decisions 19.145 to 19.147. With the addition of 5 new genera of tree species at COP19, it becomes ever more challenging for frontline officers to enforce the convention. We consider it highly important for the Plants Committee to address the complex challenges of identification of tree species found in the appendices. We urge the Plants Committee to create an intersessional working group on the identification of timber and other wood products to address in particular decision 19.147 and to build on discussions from the previous intersession working groups on timber identification. It will also be an opportunity to review the responses from parties on notification number 2023-051 and to make recommendations on the online repository. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the North America representative. Would any other Plants Committee members like to take the floor? I give the floor to the representative of Central and South America and the Caribbean. Thank you, Madam. We also consider this to be a very valuable contribution to our work. Quite often, the people who have to deal with these sorts of issues don't have our degree of specialization, and yet they have to deal with the entry and exit of wood products. It is important, and I'd like to join the working group on this if there is one, to consider working groups for these officials, customs officials, say, who are not specialized in these matters, and it would be useful to provide them with some training on identification issues. And this would be helpful. We could work with the World Customs Organization, for instance, in order to provide that kind of support. We would certainly back any such suggestion. We have organized workshops for customs officials, and we have found them to be very helpful indeed. Thank you, Madam. I would like to thank you, sir. I don't see any further requests for the floor from members of the committee. Would any observer parties like to take the floor?
And vous avez la parole.
India has the floor.
And vous avez la parole. Pouvez-vous exprimer?
You have the floor, India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India wishes to acknowledge the efforts of the Conference of the Parties in considering this important agenda item, the 19th meeting of the COP held in Panama, and suggesting to this committee that development of identification material for Dalbergia species be prioritized and giving attention to frontline identification material to assist in differentiating lookalike species such as Dalbergia sisu that may not be of conservation concern. Madam Chair, Dalbergia sisu is found over a wide geographical range, and in the Indian subcontinent it's found abundantly in the wild and in cultivation. It's one of the most widely utilized plantation tree species in the Indian subcontinent, and its timber is used for making handicraft items, furniture, and other artifacts. And furniture and handicrafts made of Dalbergia sisu are exported, and this is an economic activity that supports the livelihoods of thousands of artisans and farmers in India who have been growing this tree as part of agroforestry activities that are promoted by the government. However, because of look-alike reasons, coupled with the lack of adequate and advanced scientific tools for distinguishing the species, Dalbergia is included in Appendix 2 of CITES. So developing an identification tool for Dalbergia species will help in controlling illegal trafficking of timber from endangered species of trees without the need for listing species of least concern in CITES appendices. So we'd like to urge the Plants Committee and the parties to consider taking measures for development of identification tools for Dalbergia sisu, which has been recognized by the COP19 as a species of least concern before the COP20. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
Thank you, India. I now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since the Republic of Korea takes the floor for the first time, we would like to extend our congratulations to your re-election. Furthermore, we would like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat for their preparation of this important document. Regarding the management of timber and wood products of CITES tree species, while recognizing the challenges posed by the identification process, the Republic of Korea would like to firmly underscore its indispensable nature. In this context, Korea believes that developing user-friendly and simplified technology or tools for customs officers conducting inspection of wood specimen in person and would greatly enhance efficiency. We believe that the online repository gives us several good guidance for that. We also note the increasing number of research utilizing artificial intelligence for short AI by machine learning for the identification of timber and wood products. Therefore, it is imperative that we devote further attention to the development of relevant tools aligned with the implement of Decision 19.145. In light of this, we would like to propose an amendment to the Annex 1 draft terms of reference, specifically within paragraph 3.1 for consideration of Plant Committee. We suggest the inclusion of the following statement after term tools, including cutting-edge technologies such as AI. This addition would read as follows: 3.1, undertake a desk review of available techniques and tools, including cutting-edge technologies such as AI, etc. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to take the floor among observer parties? The Russian Federation has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Secretariat for prepared documents. The Russian Federation supports the ongoing work and is ready to join it, taking into account the existing experience with respect to tree species grown on the territory of Russia and protected by the CITES Convention. The Russian Federation would like to inform that currently in Russia, valuable wood, including thus protected by CITES Convention, is subject to mandatory peace labeling for the purposes of export from the Russian Federation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
Thank you, Madam. I don't see any further requests from the floor from observer parties. Would any observers like to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor.
Members of the committee, I turn to you. As was suggested by the representative of the North America region, I would request, if you think it is necessary to put into place to establish a working group, an intersessional working group, on the identification of timber and other wood products, and the terms of reference would be based on decision 19145. I await comments. I have not seen any request for the floor or interest in establishing an intersessional working group. What do you think of having an in-session group? Have a working group in session with an focus on decision 19147.
Canada, nous vous
Canada, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to request some clarification because we'd like to make some comments on Annex 1 and Decision 19145 and have an in-depth discussion, ideally an intersessional working group on 19147. So could we please have a little more specification and clarification on what you are suggesting as the way forward? Thank you. The approach I am suggesting is that we have an intersessional group looking at Decision 19147. So do we have the support of
Okay, donc j'ai l'intervention.
So I have a request for the floor from the North America region and then the UK. But I just want to clarify that if there's no working group established, would it be possible to have feedback on Annex 1 that was set out in this document? So I'll give the floor to the North America region and then the United Kingdom, and I will probably then come back to Canada if you have further questions. So North America region.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if it would be helpful if I repeated certain elements of my initial intervention just to help the PC committee process the question of whether an intersessional working group would be useful. I'll just try to paraphrase it so I don't repeat everything, but it drew from interest expressed from COP19 on work on timber identification that went beyond the compendium on wood identification resources. I mentioned that there were 5 new genera of species at COP19 that were listed, and that it's ever more challenging for frontline officers to enforce the convention. And I urged the Plants Committee to create the intersessional working group on the identification of timber and other wood products for these reasons, and in particular to address Decision 19.147. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je donne la parole au Royaume.
I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK agrees with the North American region and Canada and thinks that an intersession working group to discuss Decision 19.147 would be more beneficial than an in-session working group, as not all timber experts are present here this week. Thank you.
Merci, Royaume-Uni.
Thank you, United Kingdom.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres demandes de parole avant?
Do we have any further request for the floor before we take a decision?
Non. So, donc, je vous ai...
So I have listened, and from my understanding, the preference would be for the establishment of an intersessional working group focusing, and the terms of reference would be on decision 19147. However, we would be delighted to hear comments from Canada on Annex 1. Does this suit the members? So an intersessional working group on decision, the implementation of decision 19147, and in parallel, the comments and proposals, suggestions made by Canada on Annex 1 of the document, which is under review.
Qui ne dit mot consent.
So I take the absence of comments to be consensus and agreement. So we agree to establish an intersessional working group with a mandate where they will, the terms of reference would be as follows, and I will read it in English.
Committee establish an intersession working group on timber identification with the mandate to discuss, to draft, non, excusez-moi, je reprends.
I beg your pardon, I'll start again.
Establish an intersession working group on timber identification with the mandate to discuss and agree on a way forward for the implementations of paragraph A to H of decision 19147, including consideration of Annex 2 to documentation PC 26 Doc 20. Okay, so the intersession working group is established, and now I want to have your interest to participate at this working group. Amérique du Nord.
North America, South America, Central America and the Caribbean, Asia.
Maintenant, nous passons aux
Now we will move on to observer parties who wish to participate. Please raise United Kingdom, South Africa, Malaysia, Canada, Madagascar, United States, Russian Federation, Republic of Korea, Germany, India, Indonesia, Mali, Cameroon, Switzerland, Mexico, China, the DRC, and Chile. So that was the list of observer parties. Now we shall move to observers. WWF, WRI. I'm going to list those I recognize. The ITTO. Oh, I beg your pardon, says the interpreter.
Thank you. SSN.
SSN.
And please, traffic.
Traffic.
TU, okay.
ITTO.
C'est
Yeah, sorry.
Union européenne.
Yeah, to be
European Union.
working group. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's a bit late.
To join the working group.
Thank you. Canada, précision.
Canada, you will send us your comments on Annex 1? Or how would you like to proceed? It's very brief. We could do that now. If it's short, that's fine. Thank you. I'm going to do this in English.
So what we suggest in Annex 1 as an amendment is on the output 3, the sentence that is already under strike. So to add some words at the end. So the whole thing would read assessment of techniques and tools relevant to the identification of timber and other wood products. And then we would add to inform the plans committee related to its implementation of decision 19.147. That's it. Thank you.
Merci, Secretariat.
I thank you. The Secretariat, were you able to take notes?
Je vous remercie.
I thank you, Canada.
Okay. So we establish on a établi le groupe.
We have established the intersessional working group and we now have the participants and we must now decide who will chair the working group. It has been suggested that Canada. Thank you, Canada. So to conclude on this item, we will say that the Plants Committee has agreed the terms of reference which are presented in an Annex 1 as amended by Korea and Canada, and has established an intersessional working group. Thank you for your indulgence.
Alors, nous passons.
So We shall now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 27, document PC 26.27 on Agarwood producing taxa Aquilara species and Gyrinopsa species. This document is a compilation of a large amount of information available on the taxonomy, nomenclature, and conservation status, trade, and management of the taxa Aquilaria species and Gyrinopsa species, which produce Agarwood. There are two complete studies which were independently drawn up, one by the United Kingdom and the other by Northern Ireland, which is in COP19 Doc 60.2. One is entitled Expensive, Exploited and Endangered, and it was drawn up under the CITES program on tree species and was validated by most of the range states for Agarwood at a workshop in June 2022 in Kuala Lumpur. It's available in Annex of Document 27, and it's available in 3 working languages of the Convention. These two independent studies agree on numerous aspects, in particular the identification difficulties of Agarwood products at a species level, the need to have the glossaries and information, the growing number of products, in particular from wild species, the information gaps on conservation status of Agarwood in the wild, and the lack of updated NDF. And in accordance with the indications that a part of wild Agarwood could not be sustainable, and the case studies. China has also submitted a document COP19 INF 15, which discusses CITES terms and definitions related to plantations, artificial propagation, and assisted production of tree species. On the basis of this information and other available information, the Plants Committee is invited to study document COP19 Doc 62.2 and document INF Doc COP19 INF 5 brackets Rev 1 and COP19 INF 12, and A, consider potential revisions of Resolution Conf 1610 on the implementation of the Convention for Agarwood producing taxa, taking into account other relevant resolutions, including Resolution Conf 1013 on the implementation of the Convention for Tree Species and Resolution Conf 1111 on regulation of trade in plants as appropriate. B, in accordance with the decision 19239, formulate any appropriate recommendations regarding Agarwood glossary and Agarwood NDF guidance. And C, prepare recommendations for consideration of the Standing Committee at its 77th meeting. So, Plants Committee, this is the presentation of the document under item 27. I open the floor for comments.
Vous avez donc la parole.
The floor is open.
Je ne vois pas de demande.
I see no request for the floor from members of the Plants Committee. I now give the floor to observer parties.
Nous n'avons pas de demande.
We have no requests for the floor from observer parties.
Demande de la part des observateurs.
Any requests from observers?
ITTO, vous avez la parole.
ITTO, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, ITTO is pleased to have worked on this study over the publication. I just saw the publication in the 3 languages available downstairs. Together with the CITES, this is another good example of the collaboration of the both organizations. Latest issue of the Tropical Forest Update, TFU, by the ITTO, which is quarterly issued both on the website and in hard copies in the 3 working languages, covers a story on this study of the Agarwood. This issue also covers an article on the project in Ecuador on a non-determined finding for the Suetenia macrophylla, and which is recently completed. We just received the final report last week. So if you're interested in the articles of the latest issue of the TFU, please refer to our website. Since there will be the working group established for this agenda item, ITTO would like to join. Thank you.
Merci, ITTO.
I thank the ITTO. We now give the floor to the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support adoption of the recommendations in PC 26.27 with regard to this agenda item. However, we question whether element C should be changed such that if necessary, the report could be provided to the Standing Committee for its 78th meeting in the event that additional discussion is needed past this meeting. So perhaps we could change that not to reference a specific meeting of the Standing Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci, États-Unis.
Thank you, USA.
Y a-t-il d'autres demandes d'intervention?
Do we have any further requests for the floor?
Royaume-Uni.
UK.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom would like to thank the Chair of the Plants Committee for preparing this document. We support the recommendations to establish an in-session working group to discuss the topic. Thank you.
Merci, Royaume-Uni.
Thank you, UK. Now, I would like to ask the Plants Committee.
Les recommandations nous demandent.
The recommendations request that they invite us to establish a working group. So do we consider it is necessary to establish this working group?
Donne la parole.
The floor is open to members of the Plants Committee.
Chine, vous avez.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Asia support to establish an in-session working group to discuss the contents like paragraph A and B of paragraph 7. But I think for this recommendations, it should be for the in-session working group to formulate any appropriate recommendations and report to this PC and to consider, and then the PC to, based on the basis of this above outcome, to prepare the recommendations for consideration to the standing committee. Thank you, Chair.
Excusez-moi, c'est bien la représentante de...
I beg your pardon, it was the representative of Asia. Thank you.
It is indeed part of the recommendations, and as I understand it, you are in favor of an in-session working group. What do you think of the proposal made by the United States that SC 77 not be mentioned in paragraph C?
États-Unis, vous avez la parole.
The United States has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To clarify our remarks, we do support the establishment of an in-session working group at this meeting, but noting the recommended elements to be considered by that in-session working group, we are reluctant to tie ourselves to reporting to the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee in the event that the in-session working group determines that additional discussion is necessary. Because, for example, developing recommendations with regard to Agarwood NDF guidance, with regard to the resolution, two separate resolutions, we sort of wonder whether that's going to be, those tasks are going to be able to be accomplished in an in-session working group. So our suggestion was simply to remove the reference to SC 77 and leave it as a report to the Standing Committee in hopes that we can finish the work here, but just in case we can't. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci, États-Unis.
I thank you, Madam. I understand what you're saying. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm inclined to support the stand of the USA. Thank you.
Donc, vous me facilitez la tâche parce que...
Well, you're making life easier for me since a working group was suggested. We are going to establish that working group as an in-session working group with the mandate that we have in paragraphs 7A and 7B of document 27, with an additional paragraph, and I will read paragraph C in English.
For the Plans Committee to consider and submit to the Standing Committee and or the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Party. Est-ce que cela vous convient?
Could I ask if that is agreeable to you? I see the United States nodding, Malaysia. Yes, there seems to be agreement. Thank you. The working group on Agarwood producing taxa has now been established. Could I now ask which delegations would like to participate in the working group sessions? First of all, committee members. please indicate if you would like to participate in the work of this working group. The Asia region representative. Parties now. Observer parties, could you please indicate if you would like to participate in this working group? I see the United States, the Republic of Korea, the European Union, France, Germany, Indonesia, Austria, Malaysia, Oman, Spain, the Netherlands, Thailand, China, the United Kingdom. Thank you. I would now like to turn to the observers group. WWF, ITTO. Thank you.
Le groupe de travail sera coprésidé.
The working group will be co-chaired by the Asia region representative and their alternate. Thank you. Thank you. With respect to document 27, the Plants Committee has agreed to establish a working group with the mandate as presented. It will be co-chaired by the representative of Asia and her alternate.
Le point suivant.
Our next agenda item is on Boswellia trees. We have two documents. The first one is PC 28.1, which is a Secretariat report, and I therefore give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document 28.1 on Boswellia trees presents the report Boswellia species in international trade, identification, supply chain, and practical management considerations in support of implementation of Decision 18.205. It contains the recommendation section in Annex 1 in all 3 languages and a full report in English only in Annex 2. The report contains rich and comprehensive information on Boswellia identification, supply chain, and management, with a focus on Boswellia species native to Northeast Africa. In document COP19 information document 72, Switzerland reported some additional observations regarding the information used in this report. The information contained in the report is complementary to other reports that were considered by the Plants Committee in previous documents, on the basis on which the Plants Committee agreed that harvest of many species of international trade is often not sustainable and that more information is needed on specific aspects. On the basis of this and other information, the Plants Committee is invited to identify meetings or other venues that might provide opportunities to collaborate or share information regarding harvest and management of Boswellia species, and to review the present document and its annexes and make recommendations to inform possible listing proposals for Boswellia species, including consideration of appropriate annotations consistent with the guidance in Resolution 11.21 on use of annotations in Appendices 1 and 2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for that presentation. We are going to move on to the next sub-item of this agenda item, that is to say PC 2628-2, which was submitted by Switzerland. I give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
I just would like to draw attention to the update of the project Switzerland was supporting, and the project on conservation status, trade and threats to Boswellia species is led by the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, and was initiated in 2021 in order to focus on gathering new information, make practical assessments, and clarify relevant topics through active research and the provision of scientifically robust data to support decision making for the many and varied stakeholders with an interest in frankincense. So further to information contained in that document, the following research is ongoing with completion of the main components by the end of 2023 and reporting, dissemination and recommendations in the first half of 2024. So with an assessment of the utility of applicability as chemical screening tool for Boswellia and their derived resins and products based upon collection of certified samples from the majority of species and the majority of range states. So also collection of field data on tree and population health, levels of harvesting, threats and local markets chain on species and in range states currently underrepresented in global and regional studies. All these mentioned Boswellia species. This based upon a developed systematic and repeatable field survey methodology that is being undertaken by local authorities and stakeholders. Clarification as well to the taxonomy of Boswellia sacra, Boswellia carteri, and Boswellia microphylla, and Boswellia neglected through detailed herbarium studies to verify the taxonomic and nomenclature status of the species pairs, and development of diagnostic image-based key for Boswellia species. Collation of all distribution data for all species focusing on taxonomically verifiable herbarium specimens that are being geo-referenced, leading to those species distribution modeling to inform conservation, sustainable use, restoration and development policy. Establishment of an online resource to hold all information about Boswellia SPP in a single focused location that can be assessed for research, conservation and management purposes based upon extensive use case scenarios of actual and potential uses. Global and national red list assessments and green status assessment developed with range states partners to highlight extinction probability and potential amelioration factors for use in national, regional and global planning. Recommendations for additional or expanded research required to properly assess whether any Boswellia SPP could be proposed for listing and what the effect of this listing might be. Before I read out the recommendations, I would like to point out to the intervention that will be made by the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, which will make an additional update to the project. So the recommendations would be that the Plants Committee is invited to consider the information in the present document for further actions on Boswellia SPP. The Secretariat should organize a meeting with the range states based on this information to get their input. Subject to available funds, a meeting could be organized in the framework of the next Frankincense Symposium to be held in Salalah, Oman. and submit the outcomes of the ongoing project on Boswellia at the end of 2023 to the next meeting of PC27 and discuss the results in a in-session working group. For further actions, it could also be suggested an intersessional working group, but I'm not sure if this would help to proceed the process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the representative of Switzerland for that presentation. Committee members, you have heard the consideration of this document. That is to say, 28.1 and 28.2, with the proposal of an intersessional working group. I would like to open the floor so I can hear from you as to whether or not this proposal suits you. Could you please let me know if you would like there to be an intersessional working group to come to the end of this whole procedure? Plant Committee members, you have the floor.
Je voulais, avant de donner la...
Before giving parties the floor, I'd like to request a clarification. Could I just double check, is it sessional or intersessional?
No, I wouldn't prefer in-session working group. I think when a working group, if a working group, then an intersessional working group.
Okay, thank you. We have two proposals, either a sessional working group, but some preference has been expressed for an intersessional working group, if I'm not mistaken.
Vous voulez un groupe de travail?
Could I just double check? Are we talking about a sessional or intersessional working group? Intersessional it is. Thank you.
Je repose la question.
Let me put the question to members of the Plants Committee once again. For the purpose of carrying on the work on Boswellia species, would you like to see an intersessional working group established? If you prefer a sessional working group, please do say so. We will then decide.
Donc, je vois toujours pas de demande de parole pour...
I see no requests for the floor from any member of the Plants Committee. The United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States supports continuation of the work on the Boswellia species, and we support Switzerland's suggestion of an intersessional working group. We also favor the Secretariat's suggestion that the annual conferences of the International Federation of Essential Oils and Aroma Trades, IFET, as an appropriate venue to collaborate or share information on the harvest and management of Boswellia species. We also suggest as another potential meeting the 53rd International Symposium on Essential Oils, which will be held in September in Italy. We think the information from these meetings would help inform the work of the intersessional working group. And then we have a specific comment on document 28.1. Of concern to the U.S. is subparagraph 4D, regarding trade in specimens from Somalia, B. carteri, and Ethiopia, B. porphyria. The authors state an opinion that including these species in the CITES appendices would contribute to illegal trade along existing informal cross-border trade routes. The United States opposes highlighting this unsubstantiated opinion that a CITES listing would contribute to illegal trade and recommends against relying on such opinions in future reports. Regulation of the legal and biological sustainable use of species through CITES should not be dismissed from consideration because of a concern that it could lead to illegal trade. And as a matter of fact, we think regulation by CITES supports a legal trade rather than contributing to an illegal trade. Thank you.
Merci.
I would like to thank the United States. Would anyone else like to take the floor? Observer parties, India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India would like to reiterate its position, the position that we took in the 19th meeting of the COP on Boswellia. Boswellia serrata is abundant and well managed in India, and the population of the species in the country does not meet the criteria for listing it in any of the CITES appendices. The extraction of oleoresin from Boswellia serrata is an important livelihood activity for rural, tribal, and poor communities in India, and it's being artificially propagated in the country with success. The practices being used for extraction of oleoresin from the tree also do not result in destruction of the trees. So we wish to emphasize that any contemplation of a genus-level listing for Boswellia is premature and should not be considered. It will have a negative effect on livelihoods and will not result in positive outcomes for conservation of these species. We would like to once again urge the Plants Committee to focus on identification of Boswellia specimens in trade and only consider CITES listings for those species which are endangered and for which listing will have a positive conservation outcome, rather than resort to genus-level listings which may affect livelihoods adversely. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
Thank you, India. Would anyone else like to take the floor? I see no requests from observer parties. What about observers? I see that Switzerland and the United States are in favor of our establishing an intersessional working group. If a working group is set up with this mandate, would that suit you? I'll read it in English.
Intersessional working group shall 1. In accordance with Decision 19242, paragraph A, and considering the information in document PC 26 doc 80.2, identify meetings or other venues that might provide opportunities to collaborate or share information regarding harvest and management of Boswellia species, and consider to propose draft decisions regarding a possible range state meeting to be organized by the Secretariat subject to available funding. 2. In accordance with Decision 19242, paragraph B, review document PC 26 doc 80.1 and its annexes and make recommendations to inform possible listing proposals for Boswellia species, including consideration of appropriate annotations consistent with the guidance in Resolution COP 11.21, Rev COP 19, on use of annotations in Appendices 1 and 2. 3. Report its recommendations to PC 27. Donc, voici le...
That then is the proposed mandate for the intersessional working group, which could be established. This in the light of our consideration of a document PC 26, Doc 28. I'm eager to hear from members of the Plants Committee and then observer parties and observers.
Dois-je conclure que...
Is this silence golden? Are you all in agreement? You're not making my life any easier. Do you want a working group or not? Please say yes or no. North America, you have the floor.
I just support the existence of the setting of the working group with the terms of reference you read out.
Merci pour une réponse claire.
Thank you. Now I know what you think. Would anyone else like to express a view? It is my impression that we may establish the working group with the terms of reference I have just read out, as I see no opposition. Oceania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would also just like to support the creation of an in-session working group. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, sir. Oman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also would like to support the intersessional working group.
Merci. Finalement, les langues...
Thank you. People are speaking up. The working group has been established. You've heard the terms of reference. I would now like to ask which members of the Plants Committee would like to participate in this intersessional working group. Please raise your flags.
Pancarte. Donc, Europe.
Europe, thank you. Asia. Africa. Thank you. Observer parties, Oman, the United States, Germany, India, Korea, the European Union, Switzerland, China, very well. I'd like to turn to observers now. WWF, traffic. Could you please introduce yourself? I can't read. Royal Botanical Garden, Edinburgh. UNEP, WCMC. I can't quite remember your name. American Herbal Products Association. Thank you. And, sir, please introduce yourself.
Vous pouvez nous lire votre...
Could you please tell us what your organization's name is? We can't hear you. Industria Derivate Naturali.
Merci à vous. Donc...
Thank you. So the working group is established and it will be chaired by the representative for Europe. Thank you. So on item 28, we can say that the Plants Committee has agreed to establish an intersessional working group with the terms of reference that we agreed. So, thank you. Now I'm going to turn to the Secretariat. I'm looking at the time and I'd like to know. I think since we have we have item 29 on rosewood timber species and all of the items on nomenclature, and so that we don't overdo it in terms of the interpreters' time, and I thank them. I believe that we will meet tomorrow morning, starting with item 29 on Rosewood, and we will then catch up with our program. I think tomorrow we will make sure we don't get delayed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this good day. It's been very pleasant for me. I hope so for you, and I thank the interpreters. Thank you, madam. See you all tomorrow.